Welcome to another episode of Biography of a Full Body Tattoo. I'm your host, Lucien Gray. Now, taking back where we left off last episode, talking about my hand tattoo, and we started talking about the idea that I got for the full body tattoo. So let's just continue where we left off. And you might be wondering about what my job thought. Well, it was only UPS, remember. It's just a factory job, so they didn't care about my tattoo at all. They didn't question it. I didn't even know I had it. Because all I went in, went home, never really dealt with a boss or anything. Very nice and easy kind of job. And I love those jobs. I've always loved those jobs, and I think I've always had those kind of jobs pretty much where all I have to do is go in and start my job and then go home. I don't even have to deal with a boss breathing down my neck all the time. So to say. You'll see that I will talk about some of my future jobs, and you'll see that I did have to deal with my boss, which is in a direct result of why certain things happen. But I'll get to that eventually. So let's just continue off. Let's see. Eventually, the summer went through, and college, I got through the college courses, and some were more interesting than others. We can say that. And but I never actually got a job working as a phlebotomist. No, I didn't. It was very nice going into it and learning all that wonderful stuff about how to do phlebotomy. It was really fun. I got to draw blood from people in the class, and it was great. It was a very cool experience to do, and I felt nice, being in that kind of medical profession. But in the back of my mind, I knew that it wasn't for me. It wasn't really clicking like it could have been. So I knew that I wasn't someone who was going to go into the medical field. Now, this was also, around the same time I was thinking about, my decision to cover my entire body in tribal tattoos and being my tribal self. And that's where a lot of my life has evolved from that idea. If you look right now, I love to be around my place with my bare feet, being more closer to nature in that kind of primitive aspect. And a lot of things in my life stem from that. Now, of course, I do like to dress up all nice and proper and be a nice casual-looking gentleman. So I'm a mix between a well-dressed man to a more primitive man. So both, very nicely dressed to very primitive. Hot and cold, plus and minus, extreme and not. The very two ends of the spectrum. That's what I'm trying to say. So on one side, I'm this very decadent, elegant person who likes to go out in my fancy suits and go to a nice dinner with some wine. And on the other hand, I like to come home, take off my shoes and socks, take off my shirt, and just walk around barefooted with just my primitive self, and that's it. So very much on both sides of the spectrum. Now, but let's go back into, so college, the medical didn't work out for me. So I had some college classes under my belt, but college didn't work out at all. So I very much liked just being in the workforce. And so, but of course I lost my job at UPS because it was really the times. It was only the times that really upset me, because it was either really late at night or really early in the morning, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle that shift anymore. So eventually I just stopped going, and that's my resignation. I just kind of stopped going. And eventually they replaced me, I suppose. I don't know if they were, I'm sure they tried to contact me, but then I had to kind of ignore them, which was not very professional. But it's never hurt me in the future. But it's probably because I don't really mention on my resumes nowadays that I worked in the factories. Not in my expertise nowadays, so there's no reason to mention it. That's some of the things that they don't always tell you on when you're writing your own resumes. You put the things on your resume that you want to go into that's going to help you get the job that you want to go into. So if for me, if I want to go into the banking, which I'm into nowadays, I don't think I get into that. I'm a banker nowadays, so if I wanted to go into try to get a job at a new bank or a new facility that does banking stuff, there's no reason for me to say that I worked in a factory at all. They don't care about that. So I'll only put my stuff about the banking. And then, that's what draws people in to you, because they'll see that you have all that good expertise in things that they're hiring for. So that was just that. So I didn't have a job. I wasn't going to college anymore, and I was still researching all about tattoos and learning about tattoos. Now, of course, the internet was blossoming finally. And I was getting into, I was being kind of lazy with the whole job aspect and life in general at the end of the summer when I lost my job, and I didn't go back to college right away, and I was just learning about I was just kind of being primitive and just laying off the land, which is using my parents. No. I did have a lot of money from working at UPS. I did have a lot of money saved up, so that's going to come into play when I start talking about the next few tattoos that I got. So I was still living with my parents, learning about all the tattoos. I actually got into, since the internet blossomed up and my parents got a computer, I was on the computer a lot because I was antisocial and I learned about the computer. And I was really, really into computers. And then, of course, I got into a little bit into the MMOs, the massive multiplayer online, usually role-playing games. So they started out as like usually the role-playing games, and I got into those, and I started being hardcore into that community. Which over the course of this season, you'll see that I've really gotten really in depth into the MMORPG community that is around nowadays. And you'll see how I progressed from this situation right now. There wasn't a lot of time to do, actually there was a lot of time because I didn't have a job, I wasn't going to school, so I didn't have a lot of time to be on the computers playing those games, as well as thinking about my tattoos. So that was a really long summer, and winter. And so, yeah, the winter happened, and I turned 19. So I turned 19, and this is about the time in which I was ready for my next tattoo. Because I was really, ever since I decided about the full body piece, the full body tattoo that I wanted to get, and after my hand tattoo, it really flowed through me. The ideas rushed into me about, what piece I wanted to get next, what was I going to do with my body, and all this stuff. And it actually came to be very harmoniously, in a sense that because I got really hardcore into the RPG games and the MMOs. Now, sorry, let me back up just a little bit. I mean, with the computer age coming in, and I got into the online games. But even before that, I was into the RPGs when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, I was into the RPGs. Because my parents first had an Atari 2600, so I played that. My dad owned that, and wasn't really RPGs styles because we couldn't really put a story into those tiny cartridges for an Atari system. But then eventually, I remember when I was a little kid, and they actually bought a brand new Nintendo system, NES. It was brand new, and they bought it for their kids, and so I loved it. It was my new favorite thing to play with. And that's when I got into all those games on the NES. The Zelda, the Castlevanias, and the Final Fantasy, and all those RPGs, and it was really great. And then I progressed from there, and I kept with the RPGs. So RPGs were really my style. I loved going through a story. It was like an RPG is like an interactive book, because you're going through a story. You start off as a character in the story, and then as your character progresses in the game, you're going through the story, learning about the plot, and on all the other characters, and they all come into play through this kind of story. And then you get to the end, and you find out what happens at the end of the story, and you beat the game. And it's really fun because it gives you, RPGs gives you a sense of accomplishment, as well as taking you through a story. So I wasn't really the kind of guy to just read a book. I didn't like books, but I liked interacting with the book, like with the RPGs. So the RPGs are where I got all of my stories from. So I was really into that. And a lot of the ones I played, the Zelda, the Final Fantasy, they were kind of medieval with the swords and all that stuff. Swords and armor. And so I loved all that kind of medieval fantasy type of stuff. And so that comes into play when I started thinking about my next tattoo. And actually, when I was looking through all of my designs that I did in senior year of high school, I had a whole book full of designs, and I was looking through designs, looking through, and then I started thinking, what should be the next tattoo that I do? What should be the next piece of my full body design? And then, it just came to me that I should just continue up my arm, and I decided to start thinking about what I want to do with my arm. And so I just started drawing more. That winter was a lot of drawing, and I turned 19, and so I turned 19. I was drawing, and I was thinking, I had this brilliant idea to make, to design a piece of armor for my hand that would represent a shield. So now you're already thinking, wait a minute, he's just drawing designs of shields on his body now instead of these emotional representations of tattoos that I've been talking about the last few episodes? No. Every tattoo has a reason behind it, and so let me get into the reason why I was thinking about the shield design. Like I was saying with the RPGs and the growing up, and that was really what my life was all about. Reading the stories and getting into the books and imagining things, and that's what my childhood was about. That's what I grew up into be. And then when we got the computers in my parents' house, I went into the online games and got into those fantasy games, and so these RPG fantasy games really were a really good part of me. And so the representation of a shield would be a symbol symbolizing that part of me. So, like a lot of people get tattoos to symbolize something about them, tell people a story without words. So people would be able to look at a tattoo on somebody, be able to know something about that person without the person ever telling them about them. Of course, it might be a little difficult because mine's tribal. So it's a tribal shield. I'll show you in a bit what it looks like. So I was designing this shield to go along my arm, and what it turned out to be was a piece on the outside and then a bunch of clasps on the inside. Now, so eventually, over the course of the winter, I came down to finalizing that shield. And so I took the design and I took it over to that same tattoo artist who did my hand and my spider. It was the same guy still. And I do believe it was the same guy. Yeah. It was the same guy who did those two. And then we put the design on the outside, and then he tattooed the outline, and then tattooed the outline of the inner part of the shield. And then I think we had to come back a different day because I didn't have long sessions. I had very short sessions of tattoo back in the day. It wasn't until a couple of years later where I started doing the 3 to 4 hour sessions of tattooing when I had a lot more money, but I didn't have too much, so I had to go kind of slower with the tattoos. So we got the outline done first, and then we did the clasps, and then I had to come back, and then we got it filled in, and eventually. So I go there that day, and I say, yes, I know my next piece, and we're going to do this shield on my arm. And so he takes the design, and he kind of redraws it, and then makes sure that it fits, and it did fit on my arm nicely. We blew it up, and he put the design on. The outline is always a little bit more stingy than the fill-in. The fill-in is like it starts out kind of stingy, but then you eventually get used to it. Then it becomes like a therapeutical massage of pain that goes through. You kind of get used to it. Your body gets kind of numb from the sensation, and then with a fill-in, it just kind of finishes up, and then actually, that's exactly how it works. With the outline, it's kind of like it's kind of constant pain through the whole outline while he's doing it. It's a constant pain that never changes, and then that's it. There's not too much to it, and then it heals up. The outlines usually heal up just fine, and then. So the outline, the procedure is actually more painful than the healing process. Now the fill-in is completely the opposite. The procedure, it starts out kind of rough, kind of painful, but then, like I said, you get kind of the numb sensation, and then the artist finishes up, and then you just don't really you kind of get used to it during the procedure, and then you finish up, then he wraps it up. That's when the numbing goes away. And then your body remembers, oh my goodness, we just got a whole tattoo. And then your body starts to go, it remembers all that pain. But of course you also get the swelling. When you get the fill-in, you swell up whoever area more, and it becomes a lot more sensitive to the touch. And so the healing is a lot more stressful for you to take care of, because it's swollen a lot more, and it's tender to the touch, and is more painful. Especially the first few hours after the procedure, your body is remembering, oh yeah, we're in pain again, and then you have to be very careful with it after the fill-in. So after we did the outline, then we come back for the fill-in, and then that was my biggest tattoo, and let me show you right now. So what we had was that guy right there. So the shield part, we got the shield part, and then on the inside we got the clasps. All those clasps on the inside, getting that down there, and then the shield part. So that was that. We did the outline, and then the inside. Yeah. So when it was healing, my arm was swollen, and it did form that layer of scab that flaked off eventually, which was really fun. I always think it's really fun with that layer of scab, which eventually falls off. Now, of course, same procedure as always. You want to wash it, and then put ointment back on it, and just let it rest and heal. Now this is now it healed up fine, and you see it's very nice and perfect till this day after over 10 years. And that was that. That was the shield tattoo that I decided to get. Now, at this time in my life, so that was about during the summertime, during the winter. I'm sorry, the winter of when I was 19 years old, and I got that piece on me, and that was one of the starts to one of the bigger pieces that I got. My whole little arm shield. Now at this time, my parents, the winter was going away, and summer was coming. My parents were like, "You gotta get another job. You gotta do something with your life. You can't just sit here." And then they started arguing with me some more about needing to do something with my life, and I said fine. That you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I need to get a job, and I need to continue doing something with my life. So I went to go look for a job, and they even still tried to talk me into college. Again, they tried to get me to go back to college for more something, because they still had the idea that you gotta go to college to get a really nice job in the world, to make a lot of money. But I was still very skeptical on that, because I really didn't know what I wanted to go into. And so being naive, I still accepted their telling me, and I still went back. We got some more classes. Actually, this time, this is where it becomes interesting, because I went into art. Because this is where I had the crazy idea that after I got that piece, that giant piece on my arm, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should start learning how to tattoo. And that's what I decided to do. I started to learn how to tattoo. Now, of course, I didn't buy an apprenticeship or anything. All I did was I had a magazine, and I bought a tattoo gun, and I bought a whole bunch of needles, and I bought some ink, and that's all that I did. Of course, I didn't really need a lot of ink because I only needed black. But so between so this is the summer after I was 19, and I decided I bought a tattoo gun, and I bought some needles, and I bought some ink, and my parents told me to get a job, and my parents told me to go back to college. So again, another summer of so much stuff going on. So, I didn't do anything with the tattoo stuff right away, but I did get a job, and I got a job at working in the working at Osco. Yes, it was Osco. It's a place over by my part of the country. It's connected to a place called Jewel, and what they do, they sell a lot of it's like a little corner drugstore, but it's connected to a whole giant grocery store. Jewel is a grocery store. Osco is like a drugstore. So you got your pharmacy in the back. You got your liquor department. You got your flower department. You got your camera counter, because back in the day we still had those cameras that you had to take the film out of the camera and go get it processed, and the camera counter processed your film for you from your cameras. So I got to that was really neat. I learned how to use the machine to print out people's pictures from their film that they brought in, which was very neat. So I got to process people's pictures for them, which was nice. It was very fun. And so basically, I ran the camera counter, and I did shelving for whatever else they needed in Osco, and I helped out in the back room with receiving stuff, and just shelving and all that good stuff. It was just working for a little drugstore connected to a big grocery store. So it wasn't too bad. Now you want to wonder, how did I get that job? Well, it all has to do with who's hiring you. Because I had my hand tattoo. So you would think that most places back in the day, 10 years ago, wouldn't hire somebody with a hand tattoo. Well, I did happen to meet a very, very nice manager at the time. He was the manager there, and he understood my situation. He saw that I was just a kid who wanted to get a job. I was 19, wanted to get a job, and he said, okay, well, you look fine to me. You look like a stout person. You look like you can do the job. And so he hired me. It was really nice. Really nice that he hired me with my tattoo, and I was growing out my hair. And he gave me that chance. And I still, if I saw him today, I would shake his hand again and say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to have the job with my style of who I was. And I would love to thank him again for that. Other than that, he eventually left, and so he got replaced with another manager who didn't like me so much. So like I said, it all depends on who your manager is, and that will come into play on how what happens in your job. But I think a lot of us know that already. So the first manager liked me, gave me the job, and it was great. I learned everything, and I did a fantastic job. Second manager came in and saw some crazy dude with a tattoo on his hand and long hair. What the heck is he doing working for here? And so he hated me. Every time he always questioned me and told me to go do stuff and everything. Even when I was just sitting there because there was nothing to do, he told me to go do something, and always being an angry kind of manager guy. And I can tell that he did not want me working there. And so eventually, over the course of I only worked there for 1 year. 1 year. And so by the end of it, I messed up enough that he was able to point out my mistakes to management and get me fired. So I kind of messed up myself on that. But it was kind of nice to get away from him, and then I can find a different job. But I wanted to explain that the job situation, I felt very lucky and privileged to have the opportunity to work for a place in the public. I worked with the public. Now, it is funny that oftentimes I did get complaints against me. Just because of the way I looked, not because of the way I performed. I was always nice. I always helped people out, show them where they were, help people find stuff, talk to the people chit-chatting at the camera counter. Now this is where it's interesting, because I keep talking about how I'm an antisocial person, but when I'm in a job, I become a little bit more social. When I work for somewhere, it's all about the job, all about the job. I won't talk about personal stuff that much, but it's all about the job. So I'll do my job really well, and I was always good at doing the job well, because it's like the idea from school. When you're in school, you have the idea, you have two options: you can socialize or you can do the work. Well, I did the work. And then when I'm in a job working with the public, the work includes a little bit of chit chat with the customers, and so that's where I kind of learned some of the ways to bullshit with people, just to be a nice model employee. But of course, I still got complaints just because people didn't like the way I looked, and it was very distraught for me, because I was just trying to be a nice employee, but I was still getting complaints just because of the way I looked. But a funny story on that side. Sometimes I would be stocking a shelf, and I would be doing something with my back turned to somebody, and then somebody would say, "Hey, miss," and then I'd turn around, and they'd realize, oh, because I'm a guy. So that was always a funny story when a guy with long hair gets mistaken for a woman, for a girl. It's happened to me when I was working for a hospital. So that was funny. So that was about the job. About the college, my parents told me to go back to college, and so I took courses in art. Now, art was a relay into thinking that it would help me be a tattoo artist, but obviously it did not. I only went to actually like a week or two of the art classes, and then I decided this is not for me at all. At all. I'm not an artist like in that kind of college aspect. I liked designs, but I did not like to be an artist that paints all this other stuff and whatnot. No. I just, my designs were drawn because of me, and that's it. I always keep talking about how my tattoos are for me and for nobody else. So I don't draw to please everybody else. I draw them to please me. Maybe that's what artists do. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to an artist. I'm not sure why or how he decides to do his art. I'm sure that a lot of people will look at my tribal tattoos on me, and they'll see it as art and they'll appreciate it, which is nice. That's fine. But I just like to stress that I don't do my tattoos for other people to look at. I do my tattoos for me, to make me happy, and they're my representation of my own life and my own tribe. Just wanted to make sure I point that out enough. So, college number 2 didn't work out at all. I barely even went. And so I didn't get any credit for any of those classes. But I came back, and this is when I started to tattoo myself. So I was ready. One day I was like, I'm ready to tattoo myself. So one day during that summer of when I was 19, I was like, I got my tattoo gun, I got my ink, I got my, I got all the stuff I needed. The clean paper towels, I got the ointment, I got the alcohol wipes. So I rubbed the alcohol on I chose to do it on my leg. I chose to do it on this leg, my right leg, on the outside of my right leg. So I just kind of sat like this, so I had a nice canvas on my right leg. And I just went to town. I had a basic idea of what I was going to do, and I drew 2 V's going down my leg, plus a piece of tribal on the bottom around the spider that was on my leg. The spider was still there, so I drew a piece of tribal around the spider, and then the V's going up my leg. So it was pretty big, pretty large, big area that I decided to self-tattoo for my very first time. Very ambitious and very crazy. But knowing that, I did watch a how-to video on how to tattoo, and, taking those college courses the year before in the phlebotomy and the anatomy, I learned how to be sterile, how to be clean, and how to not get myself infected, and how to stay away from diseases and all that stuff. and to be proper in doing any kind of medical procedure. Since this is a medical procedure, the phlebotomy really helped me in learning how to do a medical procedure very properly. So I felt like I had a very good, already basic understanding of how to tattoo properly. Then it was just about, looking at the video of people how to tattoo, I thought I had enough know-how of how to do it. Then I just needed practice, and practice is how you do everything. I'm the kind of guy in life where I don't like to always be told how to do stuff. I'll just learn it myself, even if I learn the hard way. Now, this is not the right way to learn how to tattoo, because, you know, first of all, it's permanent for the rest of your life. So obviously this was a poor decision in my favor, because I thought that, you know, it was going to be, this was perfect. But my tattoos, you know, obviously for me being the very first thing I did, very first tattoo on myself, it was not perfect. And so, but it was still a time in my life when everything happens for a reason, and I don't regret doing it at all. That's what I wanted to say. I don't regret doing it at all. So let's get back into the procedure. I started tattooing myself, and I really couldn't feel the pain that I felt when it was being done by somebody else. Now, that's always a common factor when you're doing anything in life. If you do it yourself, you'll feel pain less, because you know it's coming, you know it's there, you can anticipate what's going to happen before it happens. When somebody else is doing it to you, you don't know what's coming, because you're not in charge of that guy's bodily functions. So you don't know when he's going to be actually tattooing, unless you're actually like watching him. But still, it's just something psychological that if you're doing it yourself, it won't feel as bad as if someone else is doing it. So I didn't feel the pain as much, and you know, I tattooed, and let's just say I can't show you right now because I eventually covered it up. I covered up the entire thing because it wasn't something I wanted there. It was a really good opportunity, but it was not something I wanted there, so I eventually covered it all up with something else, which we'll get to in another episode. But so I tattooed all that on my leg, and it healed up nicely. I did not get infected because I was clean. I did the same procedure, the same procedures that I did that an artist would do, because I was very observant when the guy was doing my hand and my arm, and so I did exactly the same thing he was doing, and you know, mimicked everything, and then I bandaged it, I cleaned it, and the healing process was exactly the same. The healing was the same. It swelled up a little bit after the fill-in, and you know, I cleaned it and I put the ointment on it. I did everything exactly the same, and other than the lines not being straight and the fill-in not being solid, the tattoo healed perfect. It healed fantastic. It just didn't look good. So that was that. And then I lived with that thing forever because I didn't want to get it fixed. I just left it there as a representation of something that I did. And I was kind of proud of doing it. Now eventually, over the course of a few years, I started to really regret because, well, I love my symmetry. I love my symmetry, which we'll get into the next episode about how I love my symmetry. And of course, I did not want that. That I eventually realized it was not something that I wanted on my body for the rest of my life. But at the time in my life, I thought it was a good idea to practice to be a tattoo artist. Long story short, I did not become a tattoo artist. I did not become a tattoo artist. I did that on my leg, and that was about it. I put my stuff away, and I never went back to it since. I realized that this is not for me. I can draw designs that I want on me, and then I'll have another artist help me finalize it before it gets on my body. But as for doing it myself, I do not do that. I was called for something else in the world. So the tattoos are simply just the representation of the rituals that I go through to further my own mental state of mind in life, but I am not doing them myself. I'll leave that to that kind of expert, and that was my final decision at that time. And so that's where we kind of left off there. I think that's going to be it for this episode. So let's just get a recap. We talked about the next piece that I got, my arm shield that I got, and we talked about my current state of affairs during that summer when I was 19, and we talked about my job at the time and all that good stuff. So we're going to call it for a close for today, and next time I think, well, we'll just continue where we left off here. So as always, this has been Lucien Gray. Thank you for watching.